So again, for this week, there's some reading here about mockups. I know if we look at the actual guide here, as far as interface design guide, and let me zoom in a little bit here. It's not very user friendly. You would think that they would make Acrobat a lot better, wouldn't you? After all these years, Acrobat's still clunky and not very good. But as far as planning a project, as you can see, kind of the process here would be, of course, come up with your ideas and using a sketch, making a wireframe, then making a mock-up, and then a prototype. Right? This is kind of the sort of UX design process here. I know we kind of jumped to doing a mock-up because I wanted you to feel comfortable using the software. So, but in our next kind of few weeks, I want to kind of go more of a traditional sketching your ideas to a wireframe, to a mock-up, to a prototype, and I will show you how to make a prototype. Okay, so I know we kind of jumped here to visual design. I wanted you to learn a little bit about the software so that you were able to build something as we go along. So that's sort of why we did a mock-up first. So this would be an example of a wireframe. What is the difference between a wireframe and a mock-up? Well, usually a wireframe is something that has more of just a black and white. You'll notice it says logo here in the upper left corner, but there really is no logo there. Kind of like what we were drawing on the board. Remember doing that 2 weeks ago when we were thinking about that, right? Then a mock-up would be more color, like this. So that's sort of the confusion here. Why people confuse wireframe, mock-ups, and prototypes. While the distinction of each phase are clearly defined, the truth is even seasoned designers sometimes confuse the names of different phrases. Perhaps the most common mix-ups come with wireframe and markups. There are no doubt that wireframe and markup are very similar. Both are static phases of UI design. They both deal primarily with how the site looks, and they don't require functionality. The main difference is the quality. Okay, again, you saw the wireframe. Just sort of, wireframe is something that's quick and more of something that you're just looking at space, really, and how things relate, and not necessarily color and things like that. So this reading that you see here is linked up to the Canvas. So what I'm looking at right now, you can download and read yourself. In addition, you'll notice here is a example of more of an app design. My next example that I would like to do would be more of a mock-up or a wireframe or a sketch for a app. And of course, the difference between app and a web page, of course, would be dimension, size, space that you have, right? On an app, you're kind of limited to a type of space. So they both have their design challenges, but in this case, you can see the difference. What else is in this reading? They talk about patterns, design patterns. And so you can read this. It's a very good reading. I highly recommend that. Again, this is in Canvas. Here's an example of Sketch. I would like to probably use the Sketch app instead of Photoshop next. Now the application works very similar to Photoshop, but you don't have the photo manipulation tools. You kind of have less tools, which makes it easier because then you don't have to deal with all the other Photoshop crap. Probably the biggest challenge in Sketch is how to deal with all the pieces, right? Just like you have to deal with layers. But the way to organize the pieces, like you see here, is much easier in Sketch. I think so. And you can group things together and move them around. So this is what I would like to start demoing to you. you to finish whatever you were working on as far as a website example this week. So next week we can start on the app using Sketch. Now, Sketch is only a Mac program. I know some of us are Windows people. It's okay. You can still use Photoshop. You can still use Illustrator. It's just you should know what Sketch is, though. At least you see it and understand it. You'll find it's very different as far as being able to use objects. It's very similar, though. You know, to make a round person like this, just like we did in Photoshop. Remember that? Same kind of technique where you have a round shape and mask it. Right? Same exact way. And so on. So you can see it's very, looks like the same stuff we could do in Photoshop. What else are we looking at here? There's tips for Photoshop Mockup. Look at this link right here. 250 best Photoshop resources. Look at that. Boom. Boom. What's the 250 Photoshop resources? Happy birthday, Photoshop. 250 free resources for designers. Wow. 23rd year anniversary. It was 2013. Whatever. So, again, they talk about using shapes, so on. They talk about the grid here. Okay, so that article or this reading right here is inside of Canvas. You should download and read this mock-up handout. Also, I kind of wanted to look a little bit about navigation this week. We're going to look at your mock-up that you have and talk a little bit about what's good and bad about navigation. Here's some examples of interesting navigational designs. And so that's what this reading was. Then also the video for this week, these are just prototypes of apps or designs. And that's all they are. They're videos of so if you look at the first one here, it's just a UX design for an app for Mobil, the gas company. So they show a prototype, basically. And probably the best thing for you to do at the end of this class would be to have a video of a prototype that you made. I mean, that would be the ultimate goal, is if you could get to a prototype of an app like that. See, with animation, do you see the animation and stuff? A lot of the prototyping software has animation like that. See how the screens move and they slide in and out like that? A lot of the software, you can do things like that in prototype. There's online software, as well as there's a program called Experience Designer and from Adobe that does the same thing. Here's a Facebook idea of how to make a new interface for Facebook. This is kind of old, but you get the idea. They show you some animation. So that's what these are. They're kind of prototypes of what. And then this last one it's kind of short. It's only about 15 minutes long, this video. Again, it only kind of works in it doesn't work in Firefox. You got to kind of copy and put it into if you're Chrome or Safari. But this is just talking about designing graphics for an app. And it would be nice if you understood the concepts before we start working next week on graphics for an app. So you should watch this video. Jeff says, oh, let's export out 3 different sizes for your app. You got your 1x, you got your 2x, you got your 3x. Why is there 3 different sizes? Oh, the video explains it to you. That's what I'm trying to say. If you watch this, and then I start talking about certain things about how to export your graphics, then you would understand why you would do those things. So if you watch this, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but again, he talks about the dimensions of a phone. It's a lot more technical. Web design was, what we did last week was, let's just, what size is a web page? Well, they vary from 1024 by 768 to 1366 by blah, 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 right? Last week we were doing that, but no. No, the phone is much more technical. Specific sizes, it's a little bit more complicated. You should watch this video. I can't stress it more. 15 minutes of a guy from Apple explaining all the technical details about how to design graphics for a phone. I can't do this. He does it much better. I'll tell you how I export it out, but this will explain the concepts, okay? Please try and watch it by next week. That's why I linked it this week, so that you can watch it by next week. Okay, let's look real quick at some of the other examples that I have from previous students of what you're doing right now with the web page. Here, let's look at some of those. So, here's a student, previous years. This is, I don't know. I'd say this is almost 8 years ago. Maybe 7 years ago. So here was the original website, and then here is her comp mock-up here. So this student was showing the original one, and then the mock-up that she came up with. Okay? Again, one of the things you'll notice about the design is, of course, a lot more of people in there. Icons in the new one, different color scheme, less gradients. They had like gradients in them. This person, CarmelWebDesigns.com, was she was from Carmel, down by Monterey, right? Carmel, and she had her own business making websites for people, and so she wanted to revamp her old website that she made in like the 90s. It was like something she did in the 90s, and of course, this would be the more modern look. Again, that was like 8 years ago. That's more 8 years ago. A lot of design today is even different than this. This is 8 years ago. But again, I made her go through the same process that we all do. She had to come up with the ideas, do some research, come up with fonts and colors. There's a wireframe that she did, and then so on. Here's another example. This was probably from 8 years ago as well. I kind of like the colors, as far as, since it's a cake website. So again, this is all done in Photoshop. We didn't really use Sketch back 8 years ago. We didn't start using Sketch until about 4 years ago, I would say. I like to use Sketch more for app, and Illustrator and Photoshop more for web, just because I'm used to, that. Sketch works really nice because you got these pre-made graphics built right into the application, right? So the little scroll bar, who has an iPhone? Who has an iPhone? Only 3 of you? 4 of you? Everybody else has Android? Elizabeth, you got Android? Wow. So when you click the button for a menu, like a pull-down menu, the Apple has this little scroll bar thing at the bottom that shows up. It's like a wheel kind of thing. It goes through the dates like that, or goes through a month like that. It's built right into Sketch, right? You want to put that on there, boom, it's right there. You want to put things like that. So a lot of the pre-made, built-in app stuff is built right into the application, so it makes it really easy to do app kind of concepts. Again, this one was quite nice. I think some of the things that, when you show the design today, most of the things I'll probably be talking to you about would be your alignment. Making sure things are aligned properly. This is a nice example of alignment, I would say. This is all done in, I think she used Photoshop for that. I think this is Photoshop. I don't think it's Illustrator. It might be Illustrator. Don't remember. Many years ago. But I thought it was a nice example of, again, some nice photography. Too many lines, though. One of the comments I had about this was that why box everything in? You know, this is nice. It's kind of cakey-like, but it's also, you know, boxing things, right? Lines. Too many lines. You get the lines between the menu. I mean, it made it stand out. It made it look a little cakey with the lines in there, but you know, this line, I'm not sure it was needed. A little open is nice. But other than that, I thought this was a good example from a previous student. And then I think there was a second page. You know, here's the second page. This was sort of an example of purchasing a cake, right? A cake. And you see they have the check boxes. I think we did talk about, didn't we talk about check boxes, radio buttons? Right? We wrote that on the board one day. So she has check boxes. So I thought that was a nice example of a interface. I think one of the problems we have in this room is there is not too many examples of anything around. It'd be nice to have some printouts of things that we could put on the wall. So maybe I will print this out. Should I print it out? I don't know. Okay. And I don't know. That was about as far as what I wanted to talk about in detail today. What I really wanted to do was see what you've done, and so that we could better your design. So do you want to print it out, or do you want to just show it on the big screen? It would be nice to see it up there on the screen. If only this one would work, it would be nice. Let me see if I can make this one work. Just give me a minute.